We are on the record at 9:11 a.m.
All right, we are on the record for the second day of the hearing in the matter of Sylvia and Quimo versus Small Business Administration. Today is January 11th, 2022. Our next witness, Carol Holloway, is present. Ms. Holloway, again, I'm Administrative Judge Martha Russo, and I have been assigned to adjudicate this appeal. You have been asked to provide testimony in this matter. While you're testifying this morning, if an objection is raised to a question, please don't start your response until I've ruled on the objection, and I will tell you whether or not to continue with an answer. In addition, please answer all the questions orally and keep your voice raised so that we can all hear your testimony and we can accurately capture it for the record. I do need to swear you in before you testify, so if you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, ma'am. You may lower your hand. Ms. Holloway, are you currently employed by the Small Business Administration?
Yes, ma'am.
In what position?
Attorney advisor.
How long have you been an attorney advisor for the SBA?
A little over 16 years and 1 month.
All right, Ms. Quimo.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge. Hello, Mrs. Holloway. How are you doing today?
Good morning.
Morning. I would like to ask by asking you, you've been my supervisor. How many times were you my supervisor when I was working at SBA in 2020?
Twice.
Okay. Do you remember when the first time was?
I believe the first time was a project in rapid funding.
And then the second time?
Was a project in 2.0 disbursements.
Okay. The first time, who was the supervisor on the team, please?
Erica Rivera.
No, the first time, when we were working in Rapid, who was the supervisor?
Our manager was Erica Rivera.
Okay. And then the second time, who was the supervisor?
I don't remember.
Okay. So you said the first time was we were working in Rapid, and then the second time, what were we doing?
Disbursements, but I don't remember doing it very long, and I don't remember who our manager was.
Okay. Did you have a chance to review some of the documents that we submitted for the hearing?
I did, yes.
Okay. Did you see in any of those documents conversations with you, email conversations, where you were the sender or the receiver of the email?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and just start by pulling up. I'm going to ask you another question about the same thing I just asked you. Do you remember being my do you remember whether during those two times when you were my supervisor, whether Mr. Martin was I'm sorry, when you were my teammate, whether Mr. Martin was a supervisor? Mr. Christopher Martin.
Chris Martin, yes, he came over for a week or two, I think.
And was that during the first time when you were my supervisor, or was my teammate, or was that during the second time when you were my teammate?
That was the first time.
That was the first time. Okay.
And I could have that backward. I've been on 20 different teams since then.
Okay. I can't testify, but okay. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to something else. So I'm going to ask you please to open document tab number 9, page number 54. And you can also go ahead and just open also number 10. I believe that we're gonna go into that also.
Okay, it's loading number 9.
Yes, number 9. And 54, page 54.
It's still loading.
Okay, that's fine. While it's loading, can you please let me know whether how long together do you, if you remember, how long did I spend under your leadership as a team lead combined in 2020? Do you remember approximately how long that was?
2 or 3 months, maybe.
Okay. Do you remember what you thought of my of me as an employee, as a team lead?
I do actually. When I heard your name, my first thought was, I always thought you were very, very smart and you asked really good questions. And that was really all I remembered about you.
Okay.
Board tab 9. Yeah, board tab 9 is open, and I'm sorry, what page?
54, 54.
54. Okay, the email from Miriam about the time and attendance policy.
Yes. And I would like to ask you whether that email, I believe it was sent to, I believe it was sent from Miriam, and I would like to ask you first of all, who's Miriam, because we have to, who's Miriam Soto?
Miriam Soto is she's the executive manager's assistant. She handles all of the administrative stuff for all of the employees.
And when you say executive assistant, who is it? Who is she assisting? Is it for all? Did you say all the managers?
And that could be wrong. I know she sits by the deputy for accounts and the accounts manager. So at least those two.
Okay. And who are the deputy for accounts and the accounts manager?
So that would be Rob Goodson, or James Rob Goodson, and Bruce Chung are the account. James Rob Goodson is the accounts manager, and Bruce Chung is the deputy account manager.
Okay. And how you said you've been working at the PDC for 16 years. Have you always been working in the accounts department?
Yeah.
And has your title, when did you start working as a team lead?
About 6 weeks after I started, so February of 2006, somewhere around there.
Okay. How many teams, roughly, if you had to estimate how many teams you've led so far, how many teams do you think you've led as a team lead?
Over 100, probably. I've had 20 different teams just in the last year and a half.
Okay.
A lot.
Okay, yes. So I am going to ask you on page, we are in the tab. Okay, so on page 54, if you, I think I have it highlighted. Do you see the highlights in your copy?
Yes.
Okay. Can you please read, first of all, do you see the date at the top? It says April 8th, 2020.
Yes.
And then can you please read the highlighted parts, a part of the first of page 54?
So if you have issues logging on from home, when and if you start to telework, please call your lead or manager. If they don't pick up, leave a voicemail that you started your day at ... but are having issues with your computer. Then follow up with an email once you are able to get on the computer.
Okay. And then towards the bottom, regarding arriving after your selected flex start time, please.
Your Honor, if I may object.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry, yes, because we are running behind. Is that what you were going to object about, Mr.?
I'm sorry.
Allow Mr. Upshur to state his objection, if you would, Ms. Quimo.
Your Honor, the document speaks for itself. If there's a question behind it, I think we can just move on, Your Honor.
Okay.
Okay, sustained. Yeah, Ms. Quimo, if you'll just jump to the question, she could read it to herself if she needs to.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Judge. Mrs. Holloway, I'm sorry, this is my first deposition, so I'm not used to this. So would you please read that, the parts to your, the highlighted parts to yourself, and then I'm going to ask you, if you scroll down also, read the Actually, that's it for that document specifically. So I'm going to ask you about those couple of portions. Did you also get this email? I know that you are not CC'd in that email because it was sent from me, I'm solo, to our team. I believe it was onboarding team after we started. Basically, I'm just asking you, did you receive this email, or would you have received this email also?
Every time I get a team, I get the same email.
Okay. Do you mean the same exact email with the same wording, or do you mean the same type of email?
The same email with the same instructions, with the same attendance policy.
Okay. So has the attendance policy changed over the last, say, 4 years, since 2017?
Not to my knowledge.
So when he says that you can if you are having issues logging at home, please call your lead or manager. Do you believe that based on your experience, so that means that if somebody is having issues and they call you, or if they are running, and also, I'm sorry, based on also the second highlighted part, do you believe that it means that if somebody is running late, 5 minutes or 10 minutes late, it's okay to call the team lead?
Yes, because your team lead does attendance, so they would need to know that for attendance. Thank
you. And then when it says if you are 5 minutes late, you must submit a leave slip for annual sick or LWOP. Based on your experience and based on this email and your experience as a team lead at the agency, do you believe that it means that, generally speaking, running late for 5 minutes or so, or 10, or basically under 30 minutes in the morning, is usually not considered AWOL automatically?
I would not know. That's a manager level decision.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you, what type of leave request do people usually submit when they are running? When they are, do you sometimes talk about requesting leave with people in your team?
Again, I wouldn't know. That's a manager level decision.
Okay.
I strictly do attendance.
You strictly do attendance. Okay.
Who's here? Who's not here?
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to still the same document, page 60.
An email from Letitia Parham.
Yes, and then when you scroll down, there are also there's also an email from Miriam Soto
with a schedule and attendance.
Yes. Would you have received this email also?
I was not on this rapid team at this time, so no, I would not have gotten this email.
Okay, but based on your experience at the PDC, would you consider the emails from Miriam Soto to be how would I say that? About timekeeping specifically, such emails from Miriam Soto to be as if they were coming from management at the PDC?
Your Honor, I'm sorry, were you done with your question? Your Honor, I'm going to object to this question. The witness has already stated she didn't receive the email, so she certainly can't speak to it.
Yeah, sustained.
Okay. Okay. When we were working at the PDC in 2020, what was the procedure for working overtime, working the 2 hours or overtime every day after 8 hours? If somebody was requesting annual leave or LWOP.
So that's two questions. So you asked about overtime, and the day they declared COVID, we were put on mandatory overtime 6 days a week. That has not changed.
Okay. And if somebody was taking leave, say annual leave or LWOP, were they allowed to work after a certain hour of the day? After, say, if they were taking leave in the middle of the day, would they be allowed to work the remaining of the day without any issues?
My understanding of the attendance policy is you cannot work overtime unless you use sick leave only. Any other type of leave, that's my understanding, but I don't make the policies, and that's a manager level decision.
Okay, thank you. And we are going to go to page number 64 now.
An email from Scott Montgomery,
yes,
forwarding an email from Miriam.
And do you know Mr. Montgomery, Scott?
Do I know him?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Can you say who he is?
He is an attorney advisor at the PDC. He started around the same time I did.
Okay. And if you scroll down a little more, you're going to see that Miriam Soto sent that email to a whole bunch of people. And I'm sure if we look closely, we're going to see your name somewhere.
Yes.
Okay. And then up, you see that Mr. Scott forwarded that email to a bunch of people. Based on this information, can you assume that he sent that email to his team?
I would not assume anything at this. Just seeing this email.
Okay. Okay, when you see the email from Miriam Soto to a whole bunch of people, do those people, if you look at the names, do they usually or often work as team leads at the PDC?
Yes.
Okay. Would that be fair then, if you scroll up, to assume that since Mr. Scott Montgomery was in that list, that he was also a team lead at that time?
Yes.
Okay. And if you read the actual contents of the email, it says that if anybody is unable to log on in the morning, they can call their team lead and manager by 9 a.m. And if no one hears from them, then they can be charged AWOL. Would that be the process that you would you be if somebody, for instance, did not call you, somebody that was working on your team did not call you by 9 a.m., would you have to report that information?
I report attendance every morning, so yes.
Okay. And if they did call you, would you have to report that information also?
Yes.
Okay. And both times, who do you report that information to?
So in the morning, I email either Miriam Soto or Linda Albright with my attendance. So it depends.
Okay. And who are those two people? What are their functions as far as this is concerned?
They are both administrative assistants. Okay. I don't know their actual title, but that's what they do.
Okay. And will either you or would any one of you notify also the manager about anybody that may be absent from work that day?
I do not. I report my attendance to the assistants, and that's it.
Okay. And do you know whether the assistants report that information to anyone?
I believe they do, yes. They deal with the managers and timekeeping.
Oh, thank you very much. Can we scroll down to number, still same document, 66? Actually, we're already in 66, I believe. Are we?
The email from me to my team forwarding Miriam's attendance email?
Yes.
Got it.
Okay. And it's dated July 27th.
Yes.
Okay. And if you look closely, I was a member of that team, and that, I believe, do you remember what? I believe that was a funding triage team. Am I correct?
That was a rapid funding team. Yes.
Okay. And if you scroll down, it looks like, if you scroll down to page 67, it looks like Miriam Soto is giving instructions as to how to submit leave requests for extra time when people are gone. And the paragraph, I'm talking about the highlighted parts on page 67.
Yes.
If you go one paragraph above, it talks about the length of the lunch break and everything. So that gives some context, right, to the document. Based on that information, and based on the information in the highlighted part below about arriving after 9 a.m., where it says that you must submit a leave request for 15 minutes of annual or sick or LWOP, do you understand that to mean that somebody should submit an AWOL request?
I would have no idea. That's a manager level decision.
Okay. When I believe that you also concerned by this email, right?
I did what by this email?
What I mean is, if you were meaning that the rules in this email also apply to you because you are also an attorney at the PDC, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yes. So if you were 5 minutes late, say after 9 a.m. or after lunch, what type of leave request would you enter in the system?
I have no idea. That would depend.
Okay. Have you ever, in your 16 years at the PDC, have you ever yourself submitted a leave request for AWOL?
Correct and relevant, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, the question, Ms. Quimo, was has she ever submitted a leave request for what?
For AWOL, for absent without leave.
Well, I don't think anybody submits a leave request for AWOL, Ms. Quimo, so perhaps you want to reframe that question?
No, that was exactly what I was trying to get at, that nobody does submit a request for that. Okay, on page 68, the highlighted parts say, I mean, you can read it to yourself.
Okay.
Okay. It says that if you are running late, traffic, weather, etc., you must notify the manager, right? Would that mean that if you notify Mrs. Holloway and the managers are not notified, based on your experience as a team lead, would that make somebody be, would that be a reason enough for somebody to be in trouble if they were running 5 minutes late and they were not able to reach their supervisor?
Correct, Your Honor. The witness has already testified she doesn't make those types of determinations.
Yes, sustained. I think Ms. Holloway has testified that she doesn't play any role in approving or denying leave requests. Is that correct, Ms. Holloway?
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct.
So I don't think she can answer that question you asked, Ms. Quimo.
Thank you, Judge. On if you go to page, let's do page number, same document, page number 93.
An email from me to you copying Jennifer Davis?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. On that email, were you advising me about submitting a leave slip for an absence?
You let me know that you are going to be late coming back from lunch. And I said, I believe that requires a leave slip and you won't be able to work overtime. And then I attached Miriam's attendance guidance that she had just sent to us a week before.
Okay. All right. Is it fair to say then that you had some type of knowledge or understanding about the way that leave requests work at the SBA, and that you provided guidance as to when it was necessary to submit a leave request?
Yes, if you're not here, it requires a leave request.
Okay.
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go to, I'm going to have to open document it. No. Let's open document number 23 now, please.
Okay, it's loading. Okay.
Can we go to page 43, please?
Okay. This looks like something you wrote.
Yes, I'm sorry. I think I put down the wrong document number. I'm sorry, just a second. Can you go to document number 37, please?
Page 37 is a certificate of service.
Sorry for the intrusion. Did you say document number 37 or page?
Yes, yes, tab number 37.
Tab 37? Thank you.
Thank you. 37. Okay, it's loading.
And when it loads, we're going to go to page number 43.
Okay. Still loading. Okay. 43. Okay. An email from Jennifer Davis to me. Email from me to Jennifer, an email from you to Erica. So these are emails regarding a call that Erica Rivera and Christopher Martin had with you. And you disagreed with their classification of AWOL.
Are you on page number 43?
Yes.
Do you see that do you agree that the date on the email is Tuesday, July 21st?
Yes.
And who is Jennifer Davis, please?
Jennifer Davis was Erica's, she worked with Erica as her manager backup.
Would you elaborate on that? What does that mean, manager backup?
She was Erica's backup. So when we have a large disaster and we only have 6 managers, when it hits, they get other people to assist them in their managerial duties. And Jennifer Davis was Erica Rivera's manager backup. Now Jennifer Davis is herself a manager.
Oh, okay. Thank you for this information. So if you scroll down the page, it looks like, and you read your comments in purple.
I see my comments, yes.
What did you mean by what you said by not messing with Erica and I did not realize the thinness of the ice?
So basically, they are super strict about attendance when we are in a massive disaster response. And so I just felt like you were kind of messing with them as far as attendance goes, because they do not play around with us. They do not, there's no leave approved. And so taking leave and then asking for approval when you know we can't take leave, to me, is kind of asking to get in trouble with the managers. And so that's all my comment meant was, everybody knows when we have a disaster, they're serious. They do not play around with time and leave, and you can game the system basically by using annual leave so you don't have to do your overtime that day. And so, and I wasn't implying that's what you were doing. I was just saying, I'm not sure you understand that gets you on pretty thin ice around here pretty quick if you have attendance issues in the midst of a huge disaster response. That's all I meant.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And when you say she emailed only Erica,
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Christopher Martin and Erica Rivera called you and counseled you, and you only emailed Erica. That's all I was saying. That you didn't include Christopher Martin.
Oh, okay. And but when you scroll down to the email right below, I see that you are CC'd in the email, and Mr. Martin was also CC'd in the email, right? That I sent to Mr. Miller.
It doesn't look like the other email is on here. Because okay. I say 5 minutes later, after that email, you emailed only Erica, and I don't see that email here.
Okay. Do you remember that who was the supervisor when those leave issues happened around that time? Who was the supervisor of the team on Monday, July 20th, until Monday, July 20th?
I do not remember. I can guess and say Erica Rivera.
Okay.
I do not remember.
Okay. I'm going to go to... actually, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, please. Did you say that there's no leave approved at the PDC during disasters, during busy times of the disasters? Is that what you said?
It is very difficult, yes.
Okay. Do you remember whether anybody on your team say from April, on any one of your teams from April to August 2020 had requested annual leave in advance? And
I would have no idea.
Okay. Do you remember during that time anybody being charged with AWOL besides me?
I would not know. That's a manager level decision.
Were you aware of the charges of AWOL about me around July 20th or early August 2020?
No, I was not.
Okay. Were you aware of any type of issues regarding my work performance around that time on the funding triage team?
No, I was not.
Did you, as part of your team lead for the funding triage team, what were your duties?
I've been on several rapid triage funding teams. Are you asking about the team you were on?
Yes, the team I was on, and the team that you were the leader of, where we use a spreadsheet to copy and paste information, loan numbers from the spreadsheet, enter information, I believe in Rapid, open the file, scroll down, copy the bank the funding status and then go back to the spreadsheet and paste it and start over? Do you remember that assignment?
Yes.
Okay. What was your role as a team lead during that time?
As a team lead, I take attendance every morning. I answer questions and train and develop my teams.
Okay. Do you remember how long that assignment lasted? How long we were on that specific assignment?
I don't remember it being very long, maybe a couple months.
Okay. And during that time, after taking people's attendance in the morning, what did you do exactly for the rest of the day?
Thank you, Your Honor. As to relevance, what the witness did for the rest of the day, I don't know is really a question here.
And I can explain. If you'll just ask a more direct question about your appeal, Ms. Quimo.
Yes. Mrs. Holloway, did you have to monitor work on the spreadsheet when you were a team lead?
I did, yes.
Okay. And when you were monitoring work on the spreadsheet, what type of information were you gathering or looking at?
So I would review the spreadsheet. I would go through the files, make sure that information on the spreadsheet was accurate, and make sure people were doing their jobs.
Did you find? Do you remember the composition of that team? What were the titles of the people on that team?
I had both attorneys and paralegals.
Okay. Did you have any, besides paralegals, did you have legal assistants or anyone, loan specialist or anyone like that on the
I
team?
did not. No.
Okay. Did you notice did you notice issues with my work performance while I was on the data entry team, specifically when you were reviewing information on the spreadsheet on a daily basis?
I do not remember having any concerns about you at all, no.
Okay. Do you always remember everybody that works on your team, or is there a reason why you will remember if you had issues?
I do not always remember. They move us around a lot, and I've had hundreds and hundreds of people on my team since 2006.
Okay. So how can you be so sure that you didn't notice any issues with my work?
Because you were one of the smartest attorneys I've ever had on my teams.
Okay. Thank you. I should have recorded this part. Thank you.
That's the truth.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to have to think about my next question. On page 55,
that looks like one of my attendance emails to Miriam.
Okay. And if you read the top part, the text that you type, when you say that you are presuming that annual will be used, did you mean annual leave?
Yes.
Okay. So for this absence for personal non-health emergency, what reason made you believe that annual leave will be used?
Because you said it was a non-health emergency.
Okay.
And I was just so when I do attendance, if someone has said, hey, I have a dentist appointment this afternoon and I'll be out from 2 to 4 p.m., I say, Miss Jane Doe is going to be out from 2 to 4 p.m. using sick leave for her dentist appointment. If I do not know, as in this case, I presumed it would be annual because you said it was non-health related.
Okay. Thank you. And do you have any? That email went out. I mean, you sent that email on July 17, right?
Yes.
And we were still in the middle of a disaster. Were we still working 10 hours a day and 6 days a week?
At least, yes.
Okay. So is there any reason, is there a reason why, maybe based on your personal knowledge or experience, why you did not, for instance, assume that I will be made AWOL?
That would not be my decision. That's a manager level decision.
Okay. I believe that I'm going to ask you one more question, please. If we go to document 11, actually, we don't need. I don't think we need to open the document. The document is actually the SOP, but I'm sorry, the document I wanted you to open was the SOP for the ODA. But I was going to ask you, have you read the SOP in full for the latest ODA SOP?
The latest one, not in full, no.
Okay, but have you read most of it?
Your Honor, the relevance to whatever the most recent SOP is, we don't know when the SOP came out. We don't know if it was tied to her employment or after her employment. I don't see how this line of question could be relevant, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Okay. Mrs. Holloway, so can we go ahead and open the document number 11?
Okay.
Please?
It's loading. Still loading. Still loading.
While we're waiting, did you in 2020?
Go ahead. Did I in 2020?
Yes. Did you in 2020 work in loan processing, in the loan processing department?
I did not.
Okay.
Okay, the document is open.
Okay. Did you say that the document was open?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Would you please go to page number 81, please?
Okay, our SOP.
Yes. Do you believe that that SOP is based on maybe what you might remember? Actually, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's an effective date for May 2018.
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe that that is the most recent SOP? Or at least was it the most recent SOP in 2020, at the beginning of the disaster in 2020?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay, thank you. Do you remember me asking you for a link to get access to this SOP?
I do not.
Okay. Based on what you know, based on your experience at the SBA, have many supervisors or team, I'm sorry, not supervisors, but team leads and other attorneys that are regular on disasters? Do you have any knowledge of whether they've read the SOP in in a significant way?
I would have no reason to know that.
Okay. When you worked at the SBA in 2020, between say April and August 2020, did you have were you working on site or remotely?
Remote.
What type of how would people usually contact you? How would people on your team, say team members, usually contact you if they had a question or they had an issue or something like that?
So at work, they contact me via email or MS Teams.
Okay.
Either a phone call or an instant message.
Okay. And if somebody was you said earlier that you were responsible for timekeeping as a team lead. So if somebody was driving and they were running late, what other options do they have to contact you?
They would call my extension, and that would come to my personal cell phone because my phone is hooked up to the SBA's phone system.
Okay. Was your phone hooked onto the SBA system for all the months, for all the time from April 2020 to August?
As far as I know, I don't. Some days the system doesn't work exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, what type of conversations did you have with managers as a team lead regarding the members of your team? What type of information would you provide the supervisors regarding the team that you were leading?
It would depend on their questions.
Okay. So what type of questions would they ask you?
I would have no idea. I mean, there's a million different questions I get asked from managers. I don't understand.
Okay. What type of topics would you be talking about? Would you be discussing with the managers regarding people in your team?
Again, I would need more specific. I do not contact the managers. For instance, yesterday morning, I got an email from a manager that said these 3 people are moving. I had 0 say.
Okay. So from the time you assign first of all, who assigns you, who chooses who the team leads are? Is that supervisors or managers or people above supervisors? How do you get your assignment as lead?
Usually from a team manager. But I do not know who makes the decisions.
Okay. And who are the team managers? Are they supervisors?
Yes.
Okay.
They're
so you mean
managers.
the supervisors are the team managers? Is that what you mean? Because I'm sorry, I've never heard of the term team managers before at the SPA, so that's why I'm asking for clarification.
Well, and I think there are different definitions of when we do the employee survey, those definitions never match what our people do here. So we have team leads, team managers, and then executives like the deputy of accounts and the accounts manager.
Okay, thank you. So will somebody that was a supervising attorney like Mrs. Rivera or Mr. Martin, would they be also team managers?
Yes, that's the team manager level, yes.
Awesome, thank you for clarifying that. And so I'm going to ask you a question that is a little more specific. from the time that you assigned a team, how often would you be contacted by a team manager, say on a weekly basis?
Not that often.
Okay. So are there instances where you wouldn't at all, would it be common for you to not be contacted by a supervisor for a week or 2 weeks?
It would depend on what project I was on, but that is not uncommon. Mostly it's us asking them questions about files.
Okay.
Ms. Climo, I'm going to ask that you, hold on, Ms. Climo. I'm going to ask that you focus your questions on issues that are directly pertinent to your appeal instead of a lot of general background. I'm not sure that you need to address these issues with this witness. So are there specific questions about the issues in your appeal that you have for this witness?
Yes, Judge. I was going to ask you, Mrs. Holloway, did you have any input in the making of the data entry team?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you have any input in the performance of people on the, did you have any input as to work evaluation for the people on your team?
No, I did not.
Okay. Did you have any, do you have any knowledge of why the data entry team was created?
Because they needed it done.
Okay. And do you know who created that team or that task? The team and the task.
It was my understanding that Erica Rivera created that.
Okay, both of them.
She was over most of the rapid stuff in 2020.
Okay.
Erica Rivera.
Oh, thank you. Do you have any knowledge as to why the rapid team, the funny triage team ended?
I do know. I presume we were done.
Okay. Do you remember roughly how many entries on that we will make in on an average every day? Meaning people, the people working on the data entry team. How many, say, how many files would there be opening or filling out questions on the spreadsheet, like every day? Would that be, do you have a general number, an average number of files that people will be, not required, but that people, based on their performance, will open up every day and provide information?
Your Honor, I am going to object to this line of questioning. I believe that Ms. Quimo is trying to get to something about work performance, and it's been stated pretty clearly that we're not here for work performance; it's for attendance instead.
Where are you going with this, Ms. Quimo? Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I wasn't actually going to work performance. I was going into the actual duties of the data entry team. Just to give a general, not the general, but the more specific understanding of what the data entry team was and what we were actually doing. So that's why I was asking Mrs. Holloway to tell us how many files in a day roughly we will be handing on average individually.
I'm still not sure I see the relevance of that question either, Ms. Quimo. Ms. Holloway, if you can answer, I'll let you answer that question, but then Ms. Quimo, I think we need to move on. Ms. Holloway, do you know the answer to that question?
I do not. Erica tried to show me pivot tables, and I am not great at Excel, so Erica did all of that.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Holloway. I think those are all the questions that I had, Derek.
Okay, Mr. Upshurb is the agency of Cross.
Good. I think it's still morning. Good morning, Ms. Holloway.
Good morning.
I just want to revisit your testimony first. When you were team lead for Ms. Quimo, who was your first line supervisor?
Erica Rivera.
And when you were a team lead for Ms. Quimo, who was her first line supervisor?
Erica Rivera.
Okay. Were you ever Ms. Quimo's supervisor?
No, sir.
Okay. Are you a supervisor now?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you report time and attendance? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you approve leave?
No, sir.
Do you deny leave?
No, sir.
Do you give formal evaluation?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you ever have access to Ms. Quimo's email account so that you could see all of her email messages sent?
No, sir.
Did you ever have access to her email account so that you could see all of her email messages received?
No, sir.
Did you ever have access to her Teams or other instant messaging accounts so that you could see all messages sent?
No, sir.
Did you ever have access to her Teams or other instant messaging accounts so you could see all of her messages received?
No, sir.
Currently on your team, how many people are on your team right now today? Approximately. Nine. And since, let's say, March of 2020, what has been the largest team that you've had?
Oh, gosh. I had almost 25 attorneys on one of my rapid teams at one point.
Okay. And since March of 2020, how many times have you been assigned to a different team or moved up?
A bunch.
Approximately.
10, maybe more.
Do you have knowledge of Ms. Quimo disclosing SBA rule changes to minority applicants and recommending solutions for them to obtain loans in or around June of 2020?
I do not.
Do you have any knowledge of specifically Ms. Quimo disclosing to her team lead, Jessica McCall, and her supervisor, Christopher Martin, a belief that requiring loan applicants to complete an outdated IRS form and submit it by email posed a risk of a breach of personally identifiable information?
I do not.
Do you, and no longer specifically for Ms. Quimo, but for anyone on any of your teams, have you ever received questions regarding the use of an IRS form?
If you're the 4506T, absolutely.
I'm sorry to cut you off. And what questions have you received?
Oh God, we had entire teams just for the IRS form. It used to be an 8821. The IRS changed the form to a 4506T. Then halfway through our COVID response, they updated their form. It's my understanding the loan officers have the borrower sign a 4506T form so that they can get the tax transcripts straight from the IRS. We have a whole entire separate department that communicates with the IRS all day, every day to get copies of tax transcripts. And it was my understanding that IRS said we have to use a form with a certain date, even though there was another form with a more current date. And hundreds of people had questions. It was mass confusion across the entire COVID response about what form to use for the 4506T, because every borrower, we have over 18 million applications for the COVID disaster EIDL response loans, and every borrower has to sign a 4506T form. So yes, I'm well aware of that form and the mass confusion that we created, or the IRS created with it.
Well, it was the decision to use the specific 4506T form that was at least in conjunction with or completely the decision of the IRS. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. Yes, sir.
And just for the record, is the IRS the Internal Revenue Service?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and is the IRS a part of the Small Business Administration?
No, sir, it's not.
Thank you. And did you say there were hundreds of questions, or did you say there were hundreds of employees who were asking questions?
Both. There were probably thousands of questions.
And did you form any negative opinions about the people who were asking questions regarding the use of the 4506P IRS form?
No, sir, not at all. It was confusing.
And to your knowledge, did any of those hundreds of employees receive any type of retaliation for asking questions or inquiring about the use of a 4506T form?
No, sir. They even set up special training sessions with a subject matter expert, basically, to help all of those hundreds of employees get that form, because then we would get it signed incorrectly or filled out incorrectly, and it was a bit of a mess, that form.
Thank you. Do you have any knowledge regarding Ms. Erica Rivera contacting Ms. Guimo while she was on sick leave on or around June 24th, 2020?
I do not. No, sir.
Do you have any knowledge regarding Ms. Erica Rivera reassigning Ms. Guimo to a simplistic data entry task on July 4th, 2020?
That sounds like our rapid funding team that she created around that time.
Okay, and so you were the team lead for Ms. Guimo on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and were other attorneys on your team other than Ms. Guimo?
Yes, sir.
To the best of your recollection, about how many other attorneys were on the team?
I don't really remember.
Okay.
Our teams have always been a mixture of attorneys and paralegals, always.
Okay. So would you say it was more than 5 other attorneys?
I don't believe the team was that big.
Okay.
So.
Well, let's start here. Are you yourself an attorney?
Yes, sir.
And you were on the team?
I was the team lead. Yes, sir.
Thank you. And to your knowledge, the other attorneys that were on the team, were they completing similar tasks to Ms. Guimo?
Yes, sir.
And were the tasks completed by the team necessary for the functions and operation of the Small Business Administration?
Yes, sir. It was critical.
And in your experience, is it common for SBA to move around employees?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And are you aware that Ms. Guimo was charged with AWOL in July and August of 2020?
I was not. No, sir.
Do you make AWOL determinations?
No, sir, I do not.
Did you report Ms. Guimo's attendance?
While she was on my team, yes, sir.
Okay, and who did you report it to?
Miriam Soto.
Is that the same person you reported? Let me back up. Did you report attendance for everyone on your team?
Yes, sir.
And is Miriam Soto the person that you reported all of the attendance for the entire team to?
Yes, sir.
To your knowledge, if you know, are AWOL designations disciplinary actions?
I do not know.
Okay. And to your knowledge, if you know, did Ms. Guimo receive any disciplinary actions in regards to her attendance?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Do you have knowledge regarding the agency refusing to provide Ms. Guimo a copy of her performance plan or evaluate her performance in August of 2020?
I do not know, sir.
Do you have any knowledge regarding Ms. Coimo's resignation on August 15th, 2020?
I don't remember that, no, sir.
Do you know why she resigned?
I do not.
Okay.
No, sir.
Do you have any knowledge regarding the agency imposing restrictive non-disclosure agreements on Ms. Coimo in August of 2020?
I do not, no, sir.
Did you ever identify any performance issues for Ms. Coimo?
Not that I remember, no, sir.
To your knowledge, was Ms. Coimo subjected to retaliation of any kind while working for the Small Business Administration in 2020?
No, sir, not to my knowledge.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time I have no further questions for the witness.
All right, Ms. Coimo, do you have any redirect for this witness?
Yes, I do, Your Honor. Thank you. Mrs. Holloway, besides Mrs. Rivera, do we have any other supervisor on the data entry team?
Oh, I believe we said Christopher Martin came over for a week or two. Yes.
I wanted to clarify that. Do you provide, I believe you said you don't provide any formal evaluation about the people on your team, but do you provide any type of informal evaluation to anybody, for example, a supervisor, about the people that work on your team, whether you ask about whether the attorney requests them from you, or whether you are told to gather the information at the beginning of the. I'm sorry, I'm going to start again. I know it's very long. Is it customary, either customary or possible, that when you are assigned as a team lead, you receive guidance from the team manager about gathering informal performance evaluations on people on the team?
Your Honor, I'm going to object just to clarify the question. She asked if it was customary and if it was possible.
Either post. Yeah, I'm going to sustain. And so, Ms. Coimo, are you just asking Mrs. Holloway if it's her practice to provide informal feedback to supervisors about the performance of her team members?
Yes, whether it's her practice or whether it happens that the supervisor will request that information from her.
Okay, well, let's start with Mrs. Holloway. Is it your custom to provide informal feedback to supervisors about the performance of your team members?
Occasionally, yes.
Do you recall providing any informal feedback to supervisors about the appellant's performance while she was on your team?
I do not, no, Your Honor.
When based on your knowledge generally, even if you don't have access to people's emails or MS Teams conversations or phone records at the SBA, do you know of anybody at the SBA, or do you no, I'm not going to do that again. Do you know whether anybody at the SBA in general, not just at the police, will have access to team members' emails or any other type of communication, MS Teams or phone records?
No, it's my understanding even our IT department cannot access anyone's email.
I believe you said earlier that you you were assigned to many different teams, and so you move a lot around. Did you, since you started working at the SBA at the PDC 16 years ago, how many breaks of employment have you had with the SBA?
How many what?
Breaks of employment.
Zero.
Zero, okay. Are you a permanent employee of the SBA?
I am not permanent. I am cadre status, which is.
Would you explain what that means?
I don't know.
I'm sorry?
I don't know. I don't know what it means. It just means I'm not temporary, but I'm not permanent.
Okay.
I wouldn't know what that actually means.
Okay. And your contract, your current contract right now, when did it start and when is it ending?
Objection, Your Honor. I don't know that this witness's employment status is material to this case.
Yeah, Ms. Quimo, why is her status material?
It is material because the agency has been claiming since the beginning that I'm a temporary employee. And it has also been trying to say that by being a temporary employee, I wasn't a permanent employee. And however, Mrs. Holloway has said that she's also an attorney advisor and she's not a supervisor. So I'm trying to make a connection between her employment status and mine when I was working at the SB.
Your Honor, if I may respond.
Well, it's okay, Mr. Upshur. I don't understand your status as temporary or permanent to be an issue in this appeal, so I'm going to sustain Mr. Upshur's objection on relevance, and you can ask your next question, Ms. Quimo.
Thank you, Your Honor.
About Form 45016, do you know what version of the form the SBA is currently using?
I do not.
I believe you say that you recommend you handle that form on a regular basis, right?
I do not right now in my current assignment. I don't even see that form.
Okay. The last time you saw that form, would you please tell us when it was? The last time you handled it as part of the routine?
Sometime in 2020. I don't remember.
Okay. And back then in 2020, do you remember what version of the form where the SBA was asking from borrowers?
I do not remember.
When you say that the IRS, it is your belief that the IRS required, did you say, I'm going to ask this question first, did you say that it was your belief that the IRS required the exact version of the form that the SBA was requesting from applicants in 2020?
That was my understanding, yes.
But you do not remember what version of the form that was?
I don't.
Do you remember whether that version of the form that the SBA was using, first, before I ask that question, what information do you base your belief that that the SBA was requiring the exact version of the form that the IRS had recommended? What were you basing your belief of that information on?
From all of my years being here and how the loan officers have always had to get tax transcripts since the day I started. In order to process a loan, they need that form signed and filled out.
Okay.
And they have an agreement with the IRS.
Okay. So I believe what I'm hearing you say is that, that's okay to ask, but are you saying that you know for sure that loan officers required Form 45 or 16 and then you trust that the exact version of the form that they asked was the correct version that the SBA, that the IRS required?
Honestly, I just do what my manager tells me to, and they said use this form, so that's why we use that form.
Okay, thank you. And when you say that there are special, there's a team handling specifically that form, and there are special training sessions about the use of that form. Do you remember when those teams were formed and when the special training sessions started?
I do not remember, no.
Would you know, or would you be able to tell whether in 2020 until say mid-August 2020 there were training sessions about the form 45 or 60?
I do not remember.
Okay. If there were any disciplinary actions made against anyone on your team, would you be informed about those actions?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this question as I don't see the relevance for it. We're not here speaking about disciplinary actions or anything of the like for this matter, Your Honor.
Well, Mr. Upshur, I think she's following up to questions you asked in your cross, where you asked if she was aware of any disciplinary actions taken against the appellant. So I'm going to overrule your objection, and Ms. Holloway, you may answer.
Thank you, Your Honor.
No, ma'am, I'm not aware.
So does that mean that you wouldn't be made aware of any disciplinary action taken against me back in 2020? Basically, does that mean that my supervisors, meaning Mrs. Rivera or Mr. Martin or anybody manager, wouldn't necessarily notify you of any disciplinary actions taken against me in 2020?
That is correct. They would not notify me.
Okay. I'm going to ask you this question. I'm sorry that I just don't remember whether whether I asked that question before during this course. But did any one of my supervisors contact you to inquire about my work performance while I was on the data entry team?
Not that I remember.
When you were assigned to the data entry team as a team lead, did you have any reason at all to believe that some or all of the data entry team members were assigned to that team because they were for any reason for any type of because of any type of performance issue, or because they were being watched by management?
Not to my knowledge, no, ma'am.
Okay. I think that I've asked all the questions that I wanted to ask. Thank you, Mrs. Holloway. It's a pleasure to see you again. All right, hold on one second. Mr. Upshur, does the agency have any recross?
No, Your Honor. The agency would just like to thank Ms. Holloway for her testimony.
Okay. Well, thank you for your attendance here this morning, Ms. Holloway. Please don't discuss your testimony with anyone who is not now present until this hearing is concluded, which will be sometime later today. You're released and you may exit the meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. We do have our next witness in the waiting room. I did want to note first, yesterday there were some problems with my video camera, which prevented me from being visible to the parties during the testimony of Ms. Parham. I neglected to note for the record that we cured my camera problem for the next witness and for the remainder of the day, and my camera is working fine today so far. I just wanted to make that clear for the record. So we're moving on to the next witness, Mr. Chung, but let's take a brief comfort break first. So let's go off the record.
We are off the record at 10:36 a.m. We are back on the record at 10:43 a.m.
We have our next witness present, Bruce Chung. Mr. Chung, again, I am Administrative Judge Martha Russo, and I have been assigned to adjudicate this appeal. You have been asked to provide testimony in the matter of Sylviane Quimo versus the Small Business Administration. While you're testifying here this morning, please answer all the questions orally and keep your voice raised so that we can all hear your testimony and accurately capture it for the record. In addition, if an objection is raised to a question while you're testifying, please wait for me to rule on the objection, and then I will tell you whether or not to continue with the response. I do need to swear you in before you testify, so if you would please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you are about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. You may lower your hand. Mr. Chung, would you please spell your first and last names?
First name Bruce, B.
Hold on, Mr. Bruce, or Mr. Chung. I'm sorry. We've lost your audio, or we've lost your voice. So we're still not hearing you, Mr. Chung. I'm not sure if you can hear us. Somehow your microphone may have gotten disabled. No, we still can't hear you, Mr. Chung. All right, let's go off the record for a moment to try to work that out.
Yeah, I must apologize in advance. I tend to have this problem with my particular laptop on Zoom. It will just periodically mute itself. So I do apologize in advance.
Okay, well, it seems like you figured out what the fix is, so just be ready to implement that if we start to signal that we can no longer hear you. Let's go back on the record.
All right.
We are back on the record, Judge.
Wait, hold on, Mr. Chung. Okay, thank you. All right, so we've got Mr. Chung's microphone restored. So, Mr. Chung, if you would again please spell your first and last names.
First name B-R-U-C-E, last name C-H-E-U-N-G.
Mr. Chung, are you currently employed by the Small Business Administration?
Yes.
In what position?
I'm the Deputy Assistant Center Director of Accounts.
How long have you been the Deputy Assistant Center Director for Accounts?
It's February of 2020.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Quimo. Oh, Ms. Quimo, you're on mute now.
My apologies, Judge. I didn't realize I was on. Hello, Mr. Chung. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Good morning to you.
Thank you. Mr. Chung, I want to ask you, I'm sorry, am I saying, is it Mr. Chung or Mr. Chung?
Chung is fine. Chung.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Mr. Chung, since you've been, before you were an assistant director at the SBA, I believe you said you started in February 2020. What was your role, or was that your first appointment at the SBA?
I started with the Small Business Administration in September of 2006 as an attorney advisor. In March of 2015, I assumed the position of supervisory attorney advisor. And again, in February of 2020, I assumed the current position that I occupy at this time, which is the Deputy Assistant Center Director of Accounts.
Thank you. And when you were hired at the SBA in September 2006 as an attorney advisor, actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm going to withdraw that question because I believe I got an objection
Sure.
for that before. So, would you please, if you are ready to do that, would you please open document tab number 9? And we are going to go, when you open the document, we are going to go to page number.
Okay.
We're going to go to page number 60. 60.
60.
Yes, it's 60.
Ms. Quimo, I'm just going to remind you to make sure you keep your voice elevated. You're tending to fade off a little bit at the end.
Thank you, Judge.
60.
I want to ask you if you see the this is a conversation, an email conversation with Miss Miriam Soto, and I want to ask you who is Miriam Soto exactly?
She's the assistant to the department manager, Mr. James Rob Goodson, and myself in the accounts department, program assistant.
Okay. And what are her duties as far as timekeeping and leave go?
She helps us track a variety of different reports for the department, in addition to time and attendance. It may be production related and just general administrative functions.
Okay. You said attendance reports and also performance reports, I believe.
Not performance report, just administrative, various administrative functions. When, for instance, she says in her email, if you do not have, if you see the highlighted portion, if you do not have accrued sick leave or are using annual leave or LWP, you are not allowed to. Basically, that whole sentence. Yeah.
When she says that, when she says anything like that, or when she sends these emails, is she speaking for management in general, or is that something she does on her own?
Yes, this convey or communicates the general department policy.
Okay, thank you. Would this policy do you change the policy periodically, or is it the same policy throughout the year generally regarding sick leave and regarding leave requests and attendance?
The policies generally remain the same, but it is subject to change depending on the level of disaster activities, and from disaster to disaster, there are various procedures or policies that may change, but generally remains the same.
And would it be fair then to assume that when I was working at the SBA in 2020, the guidance that the PDC office or the accounts department office wanted us to have for leave and absence, I received that information through Miriam Soto's email. Would that be fair to assume to conclude that?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. Would you mind repeating?
Yes, I'm sorry. I know I had some issues with the wording of that question. Would it be fair for somebody like me that worked at the SBA in 2020 to assume that when I receive an email from Miriam Solo regarding leave request and leave or attendance, that any other previous, unless it specifically says so, any other previous guidance is not being enforced at that time?
If I'm understanding your question correctly, yes. Emails from Ms. Soto is general policies and guidance for the department, and when issued by Ms. Miriam Soto, reflects the policies or any directives from senior leadership as well as the department.
Okay. Thank you for saying that so clearly.
Sure.
On page, if you scroll down to page 64,
okay.
The highlighted part says towards the bottom that people that are running late in the morning due to things like connectivity issues should contact a team leader manager. And if no one, I assume you can read for yourself. But based on this email, would it be fair to assume that somebody receiving this email will believe that if they contacted their team lead, at least the team lead before the start of the day, if they had any issues connecting to work or anything like that, that it will be sufficient so that they will avoid the AWOL determination?
Objection. Calls for speculation, and the agency objects to the use of this document insofar as it appears to be altered by the appellant, specifically with comments.
I overrule on both grounds. Mr. Chung, you can answer the question if you could.
All right. This email provides guidance specific to the issue at hand. According to the subject line, this relates to computer or connectivity issues. There are instances where unanticipated incidents occur, whether it be power outages due to storms, natural disasters, or whatnot. So to the extent that this email states what it states, it is applicable to the limited circumstances indicated in the subject line, again, which relates to computer and connectivity issues.
Okay. Thank you for your answer, Mr. Stern. Can we go back up to page number 54?
Did you say 5-4?
Yes, 5-4, please. First, I would like to confirm with you that in the top section where it says reporting your time to your leads, do you confirm that by saying what it says in the paragraph before the last one, where it's highlighted, that if anybody has issues connecting in the morning, they can call either their lead or the manager, and that will be sufficient?
Sure, let me read this. All right, if I may ask you to repeat your question.
Okay. Based on that that portion that you read, would it be fair to assume if anybody was receiving this email, would it be fair for them to assume that if they called, if they were having some type of issues logging on from home, if they called the team lead or the manager, they will be fine?
Yes, I read this as long as it's done as soon as practicable.
Thank you. And if you scroll down a little more, where it says arriving after your selected flex start time, and it says if you are 5 minutes late, you must submit a leave slip. And it says annual sick or LWOP.
I see that portion.
Okay. And also the sentence right below. I'm sorry. I want to also join. I want to join the two sections together. Where it says requesting, where it says annual leave or LWOP, running late, traffic, weather, extended lunch breaks, cannot work past your scheduled 8-hour shift. Would you concur that anybody reading those parts and not seeing, if you scroll down throughout this email and not seeing any mention of AWOL, will assume that small absences, like if being 5 minutes late, will pretty much be covered by either annual leave or sick leave or LWOP, like it says here.
Now, the portion in red that talks about annual leave or LWOP hyphen no OT allowed, that is the intention of that is to remind the staff that when annual leave or LWOP is used, that overtime per policy is not permitted. So that does not speak necessarily to whether or not annual leave or LWOP is granted. It's simply a reminder that if it's approved by the department, then the employee is not to work overtime.
Thank you for explaining that. And if you go up one paragraph, the portion where it says arriving after your schedule, your selected flex time, since it did not mention any type of AWOL notification, because it says if you arrive, if you are 5, 10, or 20 minutes late or something like that, would it be reasonable to assume that, generally speaking, if you are 5 or 10 minutes or late, you could request and be approved for annual sick, not sick because you're not sick, but annual or LWOP?
Yes. Generally, if we're talking about occasional tardiness, the department does recognize that it happens. And so in the occasional cases where employees are late, they simply have to request and put in a request for leave, whether it be annual sick and or leave without pay. But again, this is on the basis that this is occasional and not a pattern or routine.
Okay, thank you. Did you provide any notice to employees between April 7th, 2020 and August 15, 2020, regarding the difference between regarding getting AWOL, if like you just said, somebody was I believe the term you use is recurring, it has recurring absences. Did you provide an email explanation as to what you would consider as being a recurring absence, or an occasional one?
Well, those are case by case. During the training and the onboarding, new employees are given information about our leave and attendance policies. One of which is the need to seek and obtain pre-approval in most cases before taking leave. However, it's difficult to put out every single scenario in which case where leave may be considered AWOL, because it is evaluated on a case by case. You know, a 5-minute tardiness may not be the same as a 3-hour tardiness, or if it occurs twice, isn't the same as 3 days, 3 full days. And so we always do our best to evaluate each one of those on a case by case, fair and consistently across with all of our staff.
Okay, thank you very much. And when you say if it occurs twice, do you mean twice the same day, or do you mean twice the same year?
That matters. I mean, those two scenarios certainly matter. If it's twice in a year, would be evaluated differently than if it was twice within the same day.
Okay.
You know, the one where it's twice within the same day may not be evaluated as favorably as the employee who had two, you know, relatively short tardiness through the course of an entire year.
And what do you describe as being short tardiness?
Again, that's on a case by case. There is no, you know, we do our best to evaluate it under all information and circumstances at that time. So there is no written guidance that 5 minutes or 10 minutes constitute short versus extended. You know, so an employee who may be 5 minutes late every day for 2 weeks will be evaluated under those circumstances, as opposed to someone who may be late 30 minutes one time over the same 2-week period.
Okay, so are you saying that you evaluate absences taking into consideration, based on the time period? So you basically look at the time period to determine whether somebody's absence was great or small. Is that what you're saying?
One more time, I apologize. Could you repeat
Yes,
that?
I'm sorry. Would the time frame that you look at when considering the duration, the significance of somebody's absence, is that a 2-week time period that you look at?
No. Again, it's not 2 weeks. There's nothing concrete or finite as to when we evaluate this. We look at both in terms of frequency as well as duration of time in question. And so there is not a set period of time. We recognize that there are varying situations, and so we do our best to evaluate it both fair and consistently, but at the same time on a case by case.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shan. And when somebody takes basically is absent or is running late, when are they required to submit a leave request? How soon are they required to submit a leave request?
Generally, we require or expect employees to notify management within 2 hours of the start of their shift.
Okay. And as far as putting in a leave request in the system, after notification, after they have notified who they need to notify and they get to work, how soon after they get to work should they submit a leave request?
Again, we only ask that they notify us within 2 hours of their start shift. And again, that's only in situations where seeking and obtaining prior approval is not possible. When, in most cases, seeking and obtaining prior approval should be accomplished and sought by the employee. The 2 hours, you know, from the start of their shift really applies in cases where seeking and obtaining prior approval was not possible for, again, typically an emergency situation that prevented them or made it impractical or impossible for them to obtain prior approval.
Okay. And what type of information do you require, or have you always required since you've been a supervisor? Since 2015 when you were a supervisor, what type of information do you require that an employee gives you in order to make a determination as to whether you will approve annual leave or any other type of leave? What type of information do you require?
Not sure how to answer that question because it really, again, depends on the leave being requested by the individual employee and the circumstances.
Okay. What about annual leave?
Same thing. It depends on the extent of the request and how much notice we're being given. So there's a variety of different circumstances that it's difficult, if not impossible, to answer a set, process or set type of documentations or information we require. Most, if not all of these, are always evaluated on a case by case, applying a fair and consistent standard.
Okay. Can I ask you to look to pull up page 67, please, of the same document?
Okay.
If you read the highlighted portions, please.
If you take an extended lunch, meaning
I'm so sorry, Mr. Sean. I meant to read it to myself. I don't want to bother the other.
Oh, sure. People. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Would it be fair to assume that if somebody read that email, that they will believe that if you have if you are running back late from lunch, for instance, you could submit and be approved for annual leave or LWOP for, like it says on page in the middle, towards the bottom of page 67. If you are 5 minutes late, you must submit a leave request for 15 minutes. Do you have any indication based on this email that somebody reading it will think that they will be charged AWOL if they were 5 minutes late after lunch?
Objection calls for speculation, and the document speaks for itself.
Overruled. You can answer, Mr. Chung.
The information on this, we build in flexibility, recognizing that there are going to be situations and times where things happen that would prevent an employee or any staff member from returning back from their lunch break on time. And that's the purpose of this. It is not intended, however, to allow employees to abuse and again, if it becomes a pattern or becomes excessive, to continue to run late from lunch. That is covered separately, again, during the training and the time and attendance portion of the onboarding for employees when we discuss expectations about time and attendance, is that while we try to be flexible and recognize that there are times when extended lunches are necessary beyond for circumstances beyond an employee's control, it is not intended to be abused.
Thank you, Mr. Sean. So if we please go to if we open, actually, same document, page 125, please.
Okay.
And if you scroll down to page 126, I just want to make sure that you remember our conversation regarding my appeal of the AWOL determinations that were made on me.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Do you recall the circumstances surrounding the actual absences and the actual leave requests that I made? Do you recall why I was 5 minutes or 15 minutes late, or 1 hour, or 2 hours?
Yes,
okay.
I do recall Yes, I do recall the general circumstances.
Okay, thank you very much. So I wanted to ask you, what, if you don't mind stating for the record, what was your decision for denying the 15 minutes leave request that I made? I mean, I'm sorry, for denying the appeal of the let's start with the 15 minutes annual leave or LWOP request that I made.
Now, the evaluation of this, when I looked at this, wasn't isolating the two incidents regarding the lunch break or the additional time to return from lunch break. Evaluating this, I looked at all four incidents in the totality, not separate or isolated from each other. Again, because these were four instances that occurred in a relatively short period of time within a single pay period. That was taken into consideration in coming to my decision to uphold the supervisor's decision to charge all the incidents as AWOL.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shan. Can I ask you, if somebody is absent for 15 minutes on one day, when does that person actually become AWOL? Basically, assuming that the determination was correctly made, when does the AWOL status basically applies as far as management is concerned? Is it on the day that the event happened, or is it at the end of the time period?
We can evaluate that. There is no set time in which we must render a decision whether it's AWOL. It certainly doesn't have to be the same day. We try our best to, again, evaluate everything fairly and consistently. And so there are moments where we take time to make sure all information is carefully considered.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shan. Do you have, is it your belief, do you believe that the information that you provided surrounding AWOL and surrounding frequency or things that, or frequency of absences or durational absences, do you believe that it was clear enough for everybody to understand?
I'm sorry, can you?
Yes.
Can you
do you believe that the information that you, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, I want to ask, do you believe that the information that you as manager provided to people in your the new team members for the COVID-19 pandemic, do you believe that that information was sufficient for somebody to know how the annual or LWOP leave requests were being evaluated, or whether there will be frequency or the time period or something like that will have any weight on whether that request will be approved or not?
I do believe that we communicated, reinforced, and reiterated, from the moment of onboarding new hires and periodically, whether it be through announcement from Mr. Goodson when he sends out periodic accounts department updates, or whether meetings are held with the lead, we continually reiterate time and attendance. As it relates to this matter, we do focus and remind staff that leave, again, generally has to be sought and pre-approved prior to the employee taking leave. And I do believe that that is made clear and communicated to the staff, again, from the moment of onboarding throughout their tenure with the agency and the department.
Okay. And how besides the emails that we've seen, do you believe that there were other communications that were dispatched from managers, from accounts managers to the staff between between April and August 2020 that addressed specifically AWOL or denial of annual leave?
I don't recall. I can't say or recall specifically what's in those accounts update that is sent out by Mr. Goodson, but it does clearly state and reiterate and remind the staff that leave needs to be pre-approved, that employees need to seek and obtain pre-approval for their leave.
Thank you, Mr. Sean. And I would like to ask you, when you denied my appeal for the annual leave or LWOP, were you aware of the fact that I had worked at the PDC for I think about 4 months at that point?
I was not aware specifically how long you have been on board.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that you did not consider any my attendance before the time period that was in concern, that was of the AWOL determinations?
In this particular situation, again, there are times when, whether an employee may have had great attendance leading up to a particular point in time, if all of a sudden the time and attendance becomes an issue, that weighs heavier and is taken into consideration. So if an employee's had no attendance issue in the previous year, but suddenly over a short span of time exhibited disregard for time and attendance policies, and it increased in frequency in a short period of time, that's something we consider. And for this particular matter, it was 4 incidences, again, within a very short period of time. So while it may matter, what the attendance was prior, here this was 4 instances within a short period of time, a 2-week period, and that's what I looked at, and that's what I considered in arriving at my decision to uphold the AWOL.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that if I had worked for 10 years at the agency and I had perfect attendance record, it wouldn't have made a difference in your determination?
In the scenario you described, I would not be able to rule out that an employee in that particular situation would not be charged AWOL as well. Again, given the number of frequency in a short period of time, does not negate or exempt an employee from being charged AWOL if suddenly attendance issues popped up.
Okay. And do you always address attendance issues, what you identify as being an attendance issue, by making sure that the person gets an AWOL?
No, we encourage supervisors, and we ask that supervisors, talk to the employee, let them know. We don't go straight to AWOL. We take AWOL very seriously. It's not something we like to charge employees with. And so we do take that seriously. And so we discuss time and attendance, and we routinely reiterate, again, our expectations and policies relative to time and attendance.
Is AWOL determinations, how is that, retrospective? No, I want to say retroactive. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
I want to say retroactive.
Are you asking if charging an employee AWOL can be done retroactively?
Yes, meaning that if on day, say, the time, I would say that if for 10 days, or if the first 10 days, for instance, somebody was favorably being considered for an approval of an annual leave request, and then on the 11th day, they had an issue with attendance, or they had something that came up and that you did not recognize as being valid for an annual leave, the approval of an annual leave request, would you go back and look and see what other instances you could charge them AWOL with?
It's within management's discretion and entirely possible. You know, if an employee called in or was late one day on that very first day, and let's say the employee was late 30 minutes, the supervisor may say that's fine, you know, again, because it was an isolated incident. But if the employee proceeded to repeat that several times more in the course of that week, it then changes the evaluation of all of the attendance for that week.
Okay. And do you believe that that information was transferred to the staff clearly?
I'm sorry. What was?
Do you believe that the retroactive manner in which AWOL could be applied? Did you inform the staff at the PDC specifically about how you would AWOL?
It's informed in the sense that employees are communicated the expectations that they report to duty on time and report to work on their assigned days and time schedule.
Can I then assume that the answer will be no, you did not. You did not inform the staff specifically about the retroactive nature of the AWOL determinations?
Not in the way you specifically phrased it, but the employees are told, and we do have instructions and directions out to them, that repeated disregard for time and attendance policies and time and attendance policies could result in disciplinary action.
Okay. And do you believe that when you say disciplinary action, do you include AWOLs in among those disciplinary actions?
Not necessarily. AWOL in itself is not disciplinary in action. Now, it may form the basis for disciplinary actions, such as a reprimand, suspension, or removal or termination from federal service. But AWOL in and of itself is not necessarily a disciplinary action. It could form the basis for one.
How many AWOLs will justify starting a disciplinary action against somebody?
Again, that's a difficult question to answer because it's not necessarily the number of AWOL. It also has to be evaluated in terms of the duration of each incident.
Okay. And how long will an incident have to be for AWOL in order for it to be justification enough to start to have a disciplinary action against somebody?
Again, there's not a bright line number in terms of AWOL, whether a certain number of hours or a number of incident where one is charged AWOL. There's typically far more, there are other circumstances that may come into play, i.e. there may be other issues, conduct issues, there may be insubordinations that would factor in with AWOL, and AWOL is just one of several factors. And so I can't answer your questions as to is there an exact number of AWOL instances or the amount of AWOL hours accumulated that would warrant disciplinary action, much less what level of disciplinary action, because we evaluate each employee with the information available to us on a case by case.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shang. Mr. Shang, if you open, if you have document, do you have document number 10 open?
Tab 10?
Yes.
Give me one.
I did not remember whether I had asked you to open the document or not.
All right, tab 10 is open.
So please go to page number 87, please.
All right.
On page 87, if you see at the time, if you look at the date, that was June 6, 2020. As you can tell probably from this email, Mrs. Latisha Pam was my team lead at the time because she wasn't the supervisor yet.
Yes.
I notified that I was running late from work and I had some an issue.
Ms. Climo?
Yes.
Ms. Climo, you're not testifying, Ms. Climo. Is there a question for this witness?
Yes. So if you scroll down.
Okay.
You're going to see the text message that I sent to Mrs. Pam. My question to you would be, was that type of notification about me running late for work for the reason that I stated sufficient enough for me to avoid an AWOL or any type of denial of my leave request that day?
Under the circumstances, as I'm reading here on this screen, yes, it would have been fine to accept the request for annual leave.
Okay, and that was because, if you want to please elaborate a little bit on that.
I'm sorry.
And why was that okay in your opinion, please?
Because the employee in this situation provided us context to evaluate the reason for having signed in or logged in later than their scheduled shift, and it was done so again within 2 hours of their shift. And without further context, I don't know. I don't know if this was the first isolated incident. I can only assume so. If in that case, again, it would be appropriate to approve the employee's request for leave.
Okay. Would you please scroll? I'm sorry. Let me make sure that I'm. Okay, Mr. Sherm, please don't close document number 10, but can we go back to document number 9 real quick? And yes, please. And open page number 95.
Tab 9, page 95.
Yes, please.
Okay.
And if you scroll down to, I mean, if you would like, please to scroll down to page 102. I mean, I'm just trying to refresh my memory as to this specific incident.
Okay, so what page on tab 9 now? Did you say 102?
Yes, I'm just asking you if you could please scroll down to page. Look at the conversation from 95 to 102, just to refresh your memory.
Objective is her question.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm just asking the witness to base his information on those documents, and I'm going to ask the question next.
Overruled. I think Ms. Landry, she's just asking him to refresh his recollection using these documents, and then she'll pose a question.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
All right, I've scrolled 95 through 102. This is the first time I'm seeing any of these documents, so it doesn't necessarily serve to refresh my recollection because as I've never seen these, or I do not recall have ever seen these documents.
And can you please look at 110 to 111, please?
All right, I've looked at 110 and 111.
Based on the documents that you've seen, do you understand what the context of what the emails were about? The emails that you just looked at.
No, the emails that I just scrolled through, again, I had never seen those emails before. And as for 110 and 111, I have not seen either slides either until now.
Okay. Is it then your testimony that you were not provided, that I did not provide any of that information for a request of the 1 hour that I requested for annual leave, where I mentioned conversations with SBA colleagues in the office?
I was not provided these either from my supervisors or from yourself in your request for appealing the AWOL determination.
If we go back to page 125 of the same document, please.
Okay.
I want to make sure that, I'm sorry, before I point you to a document, I want to make sure that I have the information I'm looking for. Just a moment, just a quick moment, please. Okay, and if you scroll down all the way to I'm sorry, I think I'm going to have to skip that question because I don't see the, sorry, I thought I had the documents here, but I don't have them pulled up. So I don't have them in this email, in this document. Can we go back to tab 10, please, and look at, I'm sorry, before we move on, if you had received those documents, would you have supported an annual leave request for that specific instance of taking 1 hour to talk to colleagues in another office about SBA matters?
I would need a little more time to read each and every single one of them, being that I have not seen them before, to fully understand the nature and the circumstances.
Okay, thank you. And if I told you that the conversation based on those documents, the conversation was for about 15 minutes or so. It was about reconsideration for EIDL loans and the process of reconsideration for EIDL loans. And for the remaining 45 minutes or so, it was about general SBA loans, basically other non-disaster loans, but other loans and other SBA programs that those colleagues were working on. And if I also told you that at first when I requested, when I contacted those people in the other office, it was based on a newsletter that an SBA newsletter we had received at the office that indicated that those colleagues had concluded a training on reconsideration, and I requested just a 5 minutes conversation with them meaning I didn't plan on spending 1 hour on the phone with them, would that have changed your, would that have, based on that information, would you have granted, if you were my supervisor, would you have granted annual leave for that hour?
Again, without reading in detail each and every one of those tabs and slides, I can't comment. What I can say is that the information I was provided by the supervisors as well as yourself had indicated that the call eventually went into other things, and that the other person that you were talking to on the other side of the line had indicated to you that it should not and cannot be charged as agency time. And that's what I evaluated, and that's where I put the weight in evaluating that particular incident with the 1 hour phone call, is that in your email you had indicated that while the call started off as intended to discuss SBA related matters, it eventually led off into something else entirely. But you did not elaborate or provide details or information or additional context.
Okay, I'm going to move on to tab number 10, please. Page 92, please.
92?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And I believe you were still an attorney, a supervising attorney in 2017 at the PDC, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And if you look at page 92 to page 98,
All right.
okay. For instance, if you look at page 95, when it says remarks, it says 1 hour accrued annual leave, requesting 1 hour accrued annual leave, and it's from 12:40 to 1:40 p.m. on December 26, 2017. And then on number 6, it says remarks, long lunch.
Yeah.
Would you be surprised to see that request was approved by my supervisor?
Objection, relevance.
Well, Mr. Chung, did you play any role in the approval or denial of this leave request?
I do, given that this is back in 2017 and there's no signature on here as to who approved it, I can't say. I don't know if I was involved or not.
Okay. Do you have any recollection of her ever appealing any issue related to this leave to you?
No.
All right. I don't think this witness is appropriate for this question, Ms. Climo, so I'm going to sustain that objection.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. Can we move on to document number 23, please?
Tab 10?
I'm sorry, I keep saying document numbers, but I meant to say 37, not even 23, but 37 first.
Tab 37?
Yes, tab 37, page 25.
Okay.
And this is an email from, and I think we're going to scroll down a little bit, but I would like us to scroll down to say page I mean, when I say scroll down, I mean look through the conversation to those in those pages.
Okay.
We're going to go all the way to page 38. But I just wanted, first of all, to make sure that you remember the events that took place surrounding these issues.
Okay.
Okay. Can I ask you, if you remember, who initiated the talks or the discussion within management as to whether to terminate me in 2020?
I don't recall who or how that transpired. I can speak to our normal process. Usually, if there are performance or production with an employee struggling with their performance or production, we ask that supervisors talk to the employees, giving them an opportunity. Number one, put them on notice so that they're aware of areas where they may be struggling, and giving them a reasonable time to improve. And having looked at this email, it appears that there may have been some areas of performance that may have been identified by the supervisor. And so we wanted to make sure that the supervisor did communicate that to the employee.
Okay. So did that have anything to do with you said performance, but did that have anything to do with also attendance?
They're looked at and evaluated separately. As I indicated earlier, it is not uncommon for employees where we're evaluating multiple issues, and they're not necessarily separate and apart. We look at totality, and so you may have an employee where we are evaluating time and attendance as well as performance or insubordination or a host of any other things. And so in this particular case, based on the information we were provided by the supervisor, it appears that we were looking at both a issue with time and attendance as well as possible performance.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shen. Do you recall what type of information you were provided from the supervisor on performance on any performance issues that I had?
Only the summary that we're looking at here in one of the slides that's described by Supervisor Erica Rivera.
Okay. And generally speaking, do you make determination? Do you start termination talks, or do you make determinations solely based on what the supervisor says about someone else?
We take that into consideration, but that is not the supervisor. Ultimately would have to consult myself as well as Mr. Goodson. And before we take any such action, we always consult and confer with our employee relations group.
Okay. In conferring and discussing termination, do you look at any documentation or any data at all before moving forward or doing your assessment of whether to of the person's work or whether to terminate that person? Do you look at any documentation or any data whatsoever?
Our supervisors do, and we rely and we trust and we lean on our supervisors to do a fair and consistent, accurate assessment and evaluation of each employee's performance.
What type of data or information do supervisors collect to make those determinations?
I don't know all of the different databases. Just provide background. During this time, the agency was responding to an unprecedented level of disaster loan activity necessitated by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so many processes as well as systems had to be adopted and implemented and put into place to react and respond and to service the unprecedented number of disaster survivors that came to the SBA for assistance. And part of that change was the use of a third-party vendor and their system to administer the COVID Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Part of that vendor system, there were issues that we could not anticipate having come up, and as it did, we had to pivot. We had to implement manual processes quickly and rapidly as possible to resolve, address, and to prevent further issues. And so at this time in 2020, from the commencement of the COVID-19 pandemic, and now as we continue to work through and offer assistance with COVID EIDLs, a lot of different processes, a lot of different teams, groups, projects were stood up in order to meet the incredible demand and the many issues that came up and identified that could not again have been anticipated because we were working entirely in a new vendor system. And so I cannot speak to the various and multiple or multitude of different systems reports that our supervisors had the challenge of working in, creating, developing, monitoring throughout the pandemic.
Okay. To summarize what you just, not to summarize, but specifically about what you just said, are you also saying that, are you saying that, for instance, supervisors like Mr. Martin and Mrs. Rivera during my time at the SBA in 2020 may not have kept track of my performance?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying you asked if I knew what report or what was being used to track. I don't know specifically which database, which spreadsheet, by what means. I do know it was being tracked by our supervisors, respectively, in your case, Mr. Martin as well as Ms. Rivera.
Thank you, Mr. Sean. And as a manager in the department, do you still have meetings with supervising attorneys to discuss their work, to discuss their duties?
Can you rephrase or restate that question, please?
Yeah, Ms. Quimo, I think, hold on, Ms. Quimo. I think at this point, we need to focus specifically on the issues in your appeal. So I'm not quite sure where you're going with this, but if you could get to the issues that are in your appeal and ask him a specific question about that.
Okay, thank you, Judge. Based on the email conversation that you just read, on page 30, there's a July 24 email where you say that, let me quote that. So I start quoting. On page 30, where before I ask the question, was Mrs. Felicia Izabigi the contact at the ODSEE? ODSEE, okay, that you reached out to discuss this matter?
Correct. Ms. Izabigi is part of our employee relations group, part of ODSEE, which is the Office of Disaster Strategic Effectiveness and Efficiency. And so, yes, she was the individual in that group that I was consulting, myself, Mr. Goodson, as well as Mr. Martin and Ms. Rivera. We were all consulting with Ms. Felicia Izabigi.
Okay. And on page 30, where you say that you informed her that you were holding on termination for now, what was your decision to end talks about termination based on?
When I followed up and discussed with my supervisors, Mr. Martin and Ms. Rivera, it was my understanding that while there may, in their assessment, been some performance issue, it may not have been communicated to you at all. And so based on that, I had indicated to them that we cannot terminate an employee again without applying the consistent standard we've always applied, which is we have to let the employee know of areas where we feel they're struggling with and give them a reasonable time to improve.
Thank you very much. And if you go to page 38, is that basically the conversation you were discussing moments ago regarding informing Mrs. Rivera and Mr. Martin on holding off on termination at this time?
That is correct. That is correct.
And in this email, please go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, saying that this email again reflects what occurred. I followed up and I did the due diligence in speaking with the supervisors to determine what did or did not or has not occurred yet as it relates to any performance issues. Upon learning that the supervisor had not yet counseled the employee, I directed and advised them that termination is not the correct or appropriate action, and to have them make sure that they communicated that to you in terms of any areas of performance that needed improvement.
Okay, thank you very much. If we go back to page 30, I just realized that I forgot to ask you to scroll down to the bottom of that page. And I was going to ask you, in this email, Mrs. Izabigi says, did you decide to want and not charge for AWOL? Did you talk to Mrs. Felicia about whether you were considering not charging me with AWOL?
I don't recall the specifics there. From this email, my recollection is Mrs. Biggie was just following up. She wanted to know the status as to what decisions the department had made, and I was still evaluating your request or appeal on the AWOL determination.
Okay. And if we can open, please, document number 37. Is that the document we have? Yes, actually, that is the document we have open. So, still in 37, can we go to page 41, please?
41.
Yes, please.
Okay. All right.
Okay. This email, as you can see, is from Mr. Michael Greeley.
Yes.
To Mr. Goodson and you and Mr. Garland. Can you please explain who the other people are? I mean, who each person is, and
Sure.
how they relate to one another as far as hierarchy goes.
Sure. Mr. Goodson is my first line supervisor. Mr. Greeley is my second line supervisor, and Mr. Garland is my third line supervisor.
Okay. And that conversation happened on July 22nd. Am I correct? 2 days before the conversation that we just saw with Mrs. Izabiki. Is that
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And if you remember also, this happened, July 22nd was a day, and this is at 8 a.m. That was a day after I had introduced my annual leave request to you, right? Actually, if you scroll down, you don't even need to use your reconnection merge, because you can just scroll down, and then there's an email from me to the four of you asking you to reconsider my denied leave.
Yes.
Okay. And in his email, Mr. Greeley said that that we've been working a lot of long hours and some measure of reasonable flexibility can be considered. Did you how did you interpret the Mr. Greeley's input into my request for reconsideration?
Exactly as he stated, was a measure of reasonable flexibility, but taken again in context is the frequency as well as the circumstances surrounding it. The one incident where the employee was 2 hours late reporting for work, and we have given opportunities to provide us information, not even documentation, but just some kind of information context for us to evaluate whether the 2 hour late show was in fact an emergency situation. At that time, we had a staff of anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 federal employees and contractors working within the accounts department, and to effectively and efficiently manage an operation with that large a staff, we had to again maintain a level of consistency when it came to attendance and policy. And so while Mr. Greeley did indicate that flexibility should be considered, we did just that. We did consider flexibility, but taken in its totality within a 2-week period, the number of instances, as well as the failure to provide us any information to adequately evaluate one of the incident, we took all of that in consideration in the decision to uphold the AWOL determination.
Okay. Would you please scroll down to page number 42, please?
Okay.
Did you receive this email from Mr. I suppose you received because you assisted in that email. Did you read it, or did back then? Do you recall seeing this email? That's what I want to ask. From July 21st.
I do. I recall this email.
Okay. And what I'm reading is that the ODSEE contact that you reached out to stated that that the leave requests that are made qualified as leave without pay. Why did that not make any? No, I'm sorry. I'm going to ask you: Did that ODSEE recommendation or advice play any role in your denial of my appeal of the leave?
Yeah, we consulted ODSEE. We considered their recommendation. Ultimately, ODSEE is an advisory, plays an advisory role, and when I looked at the totality of the circumstances and the information I was provided by yourself as well as the supervisor, I made the determination that because of the 4 incidents in a single pay period, as well as your refusal to provide us context to evaluate one of the more significant incident, taken as a whole, that formed the basis for my decision to uphold the decision. To uphold the charge of AWOL for those days.
Mr. Chen, hold on. Mr. Chen, could you clarify for me, what is ODSEE?
ODSEE is the Office of Disaster Strategic Effectiveness and Engagement. They are the Office of Disasters Assistance Employee Relations Group.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to ask you, Mr. Shen, if you would please pull up tab number 23.
Okay.
Actually, because you, before we do that, can I ask you, Mr. Shen, did you advise my supervisors to issue a letter of counseling to me because of these incidents? Okay.
Not that I recall.
Okay, then we don't have to pull that tab up. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I would like to ask you, Mr. Chung, how many attorneys did you, roughly how many attorneys did the PDC office hire as contractors or permanent employees, not permanent, but contractors or direct hires for the COVID-19 pandemic?
I would not know the number, the breakdown between legal assistants, paralegals, and attorneys. I just know there were a lot of each categories. That information may be available to our personnel department.
Okay. Would it be fair to say that around June and July 2020, that the PDC office was aggressively hiring attorneys to handle the EIDL loans?
We were aggressively hiring in all categories, attorneys, paralegals, as well as legal assistants.
Okay. How long, if you can speak as to this, how long would it take for somebody that is newly hired to get on board and start producing at the level of somebody that has been on the floor, generally speaking?
Objection, relevance.
Yep, sustained. Ms. Quimo, could you ask a question directly related to your appeal, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Thanks. Sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me. Mr. Chung, can you, if you still have tab number 10 open and we go to page 115, please.
Sure. Give me 1 second. All right.
Did you have anything to do with recommending or approving my promotion to higher grade?
Objection, relevance.
Ms. Quimo, you proffered this witness during your pre-hearing submissions to testify regarding your performance and the AWOL determinations that you received under his leadership. I think he's spoken on those topics, so I didn't approve him to testify on matters beyond that. So it seems to me that you're exceeding the scope of what you proffered this witness for. What information are you seeking now that has to do with those topics?
Yes, Your Honor. I just wanted to point out that on July 5th, I received a conditional offer for promotion to higher grade, and I believe that such promotions take into consideration performance and general attendance matters and things like that. And then that conditional offer became solidified, or became. I was actually promoted in late July after all the AWOL determinations. So I wanted to ask Mr. Chung whether why, despite reaching out to ODSEE and exploring the possibility of terminating me, I was approved for the promotion, and then also what role do AWOLs play in such evaluations for suitability or to move up to higher grade.
Okay. Well, I don't see the relevance of those issues to this appeal, Ms. Quimo. I mean, the fact is that you were promoted, so there's no issue about a denial of promotion being an adverse action at issue here. So I'm going to sustain the objection on the grounds of relevance. So you can move on if you have more questions for this witness.
Okay. I believe that I've asked. Oh, I'm sorry, Judge. There are a couple more questions. Mr. Chung, how are you aware of ways that remote employees, like I was back in 2020, what type of systems they have access to, and whether those seems, no, I'm going to rephrase that question, I'm sorry. Can you confirm, Mr. Stern, that for people working remotely from home, for instance, during the disaster in 2020, that they have to use their cell phones to connect to the SBA system in order to call borrowers?
Objection relevance.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Quimo, why is that relevant?
It's relevant because I'm trying to establish the fact that that we had to use our cell phones to connect, and that we were not necessarily using the SBA system to call. I mean, we were not using the embedded SBA tools for applicants, and there were issues, for instance, when the connection will not, the disconnection after work hours, for instance, or even during the work day, will not work as well as it would have worked. Therefore, it could be, for instance, that IT security or any other people who have access to our phone calls, basically to our own private matters.
Sustained. The objection is sustained on the grounds of relevance.
Okay. I believe that's all for now, Judge.
Okay. Ms. Landry, do you have cross-examination?
I do, Your Honor. Just briefly, please. Mr. Chung, good afternoon. Could you please explain briefly for the court what the leave restrictions that were in place for the Processing and Disbursement Center in summer of 2020 were?
Sure. At that time, again, we were in the midst of responding to the unprecedented disaster created by the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. Over a course of several months, we onboarded thousands of federal employees as well as contractors to meet the unprecedented demands for disaster loans to businesses that were suffering as a result of the pandemic. And so we were all on mandatory overtime. Employees who were hired were put on notice up front that we were working 6 days, 10-hour days, and those were mandatories. And because of the exigencies of the loan volumes, that we simply weren't in a position to allow or approve much leave outside of medical or medically necessitated leave. And that's what we did. We applied it consistently throughout the entire department, regardless of positions or what area they were working, given, again, the large volume of loan activities we were trying to respond to.
Thank you. And am I correct in that if an individual had unapproved leave for a day and I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. What kind of situation would lead to someone being unable to work mandatory overtime?
Generally, it would be medically necessary. If they had procedures or if they were ill, obviously if they were diagnosed with COVID. So in those situations, of course, we approved and allowed leave. What was restrictive was primarily vacation time or personal time off, unrelated to medical or sick leave.
And you recall sustaining the decision to charge the appellant with AWOL in this matter, right?
Yes.
And you previously testified that you considered the AWOLs on a case-by-case, fact-specific basis, right?
Yes.
And you did that for the appellant's AWOL charges, correct?
Yes.
Now, isn't it true that appellant failed to tell you the exigencies or any circumstances behind the personal emergency that she took for 2 hours one day?
That's correct. We asked on several occasions, and we gave several opportunities to provide us. We wanted, again, we took her request seriously. We wanted to seriously give it fair consideration, but to do so, we needed information. We needed context to evaluate whether it constituted a true personal emergency. And after several requests, we were not provided any information to do so.
If appellant had told you that she needed that leave in order to apply for a job position not within the agency, would that leave have been granted?
Generally, no. And secondary to that is, if that's what I'm assuming, if that was the reason for the 2 hour late start on the day in question, that would not have been sufficient basis for not seeking and obtaining pre-approval. I would consider that something that the employee would have known in advance and had opportunity to obtain pre-approval, as opposed to notifying us after she's already taken the leave.
At the time that you sustained the AWOL charges against the appellant, you didn't have any knowledge of any disclosures or communications by the appellant about rules regarding the EIDL loans, did you?
No.
And at the time that you sustained the AWOL charges against appellant, you did not have any knowledge of any disclosures or communications by appellant regarding an IRS form 4506T, did you?
No.
And to confirm for the court, the appellant was not terminated from her job, is that correct?
That's correct. She resigned.
And how do you know that the appellant resigned from her job?
I was copied on an email regarding the employee's email to, I believe it was her supervisor and or personnel notifying the agency of her resignation.
Do you have any reason to believe that the appellant's resignation was anything other than voluntary?
I had no reason to believe that.
No further questions from the agency.
All right, Ms. Quimo, do you have any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, I do. Please. Mr. Sean, would you please open document number 10? Again, page, let's go to page 31, please.
Okay.
Beyond the information that I provided, beyond the information I provide in these emails to you and to managers, what other type of information would you have required for the approval of my leave request for being late or for being late after lunch or things like that? What type of information would you have needed more than what I said?
Each one, information as to returning late from lunch, that itself was already self-explanatory. You had already reported that you were coming back late from lunch. Same thing with the phone call that extended by your own statement beyond SBA related. No additional documentation or information was needed. In regards to the incident with the 2 hour late show or arrival at work, when you had claimed that it was due to a personal emergency, we did need information and requested information to properly evaluate whether it truly constituted an emergency. And had it did, i.e. if it was a flat tire or medical emergency, those are something, information certainly would be applicable and relevant in considering whether or not to charge that as AWOL. But at that time, after multiple requests, we were not provided any information or context to evaluate that particular incident, which led us to then evaluate the totality of the 4 instances that occurred over a 2-week period.
Okay, so you are saying that the AWOL determinations, the 4 AWOL determinations were made on based on that single instance where I say that I had a personal emergency, but I did not give you insight into why I had what constituted a personal emergency. Is that what your assessment of the situation?
Objection. This characterizes prior testimony.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going to
sustained.
Can I ask you, Mr. Shank, to scroll down to page number 47, please?
Okay.
Okay. And this is a July 25th, 2020 email from me to Mr. Goodson, and you are also CC'd in those emails.
Was there a particular slide number you needed me to look at through?
No, I just wanted to make sure that you remembered those emails, and I wanted to see if maybe on page 48 you look at the list of attachments that I added, and I wanted to ask you whether, based on the amount of information that I provided and the research that I had done, why it was not sufficient for you to, approve my leave request.
I can't speak to Mr. Goodson. This email that you're directing me to was directed to Mr. Goodson after I had already denied your request on appeal. And so I can't speak to, again, Mr. Goodson's evaluation of any documentation that you had attached to this email, as it was directed to him, not me.
Okay.
I was not in a position to make a decision on this, as I had already previously rendered mine.
Okay. And during this time period is it your belief? Would you agree that my performance was still being measured by my supervisors on the task that I was on?
Objection. Relevance.
I'm sorry.
I'll allow it. Hold on. I'll allow it. Mr. Chung, you can answer.
Can you restate that? I didn't understand the question.
During the time that I was appealing my leave, the denial of my leave request, would you know whether my performance was still being evaluated by my supervisors?
The department evaluates performance continuously of all employees. We distinctly treat conduct separate from performance. We can have a very high-performing employee with conduct issues, or we can have an employee with conduct issues, with no conduct issues that are struggling with performance. And so the two are not separate. They are separate in the sense that when we evaluate it, so we could be looking at or making a decision as to a conduct issue or time and attendance issue, does not prevent or does not mean that we're not continuing to monitor and evaluate performance by all of our staff, as it ultimately impacts the service we deliver to the customers we are serving.
Okay. I would like to ask you then, would it not be me maybe trying to be a good employee by by putting off looking to, assembling those 23 or so attachments until, say, a weekend when work is slow, a little slower than usual, instead of having my performance suffer during the week.
Objection, relevance.
Sustained. So he's already answered that he had already rendered his decision at this point, Ms. Quimo, so it wouldn't be up to him to evaluate how you put this documents together or how that may have factored into anybody else's thinking.
Okay, Mr. Sean, if you would please go to page number 57.
Okay.
And keep scrolling down. You can look through the emails and just keep scrolling down. And if you get to page number 60.
60.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can also keep scrolling down if you wish, but I just want to point out to the page 60 and page 61. And as you say, as you can see at the top of page of those pages, it says forward request for reconsideration of denied leave. And would you confirm that based on these documents that you did in fact receive this email that explained that I was on a virtual, that I was that I communicated with my colleagues in another office regarding these matters, the EIDL loans reconsideration?
Yes, I was aware. I did see that particular email, which evidence you were on that call, but that in of itself did not explain by your own admission and your own statement in the email that what again started off regarding SBA related matter in your email. You indicated that after the topic discussed in the email you just referred me to, after that topic had been discussed, it then veered off into other things, and that the person that you were on the call with had to tell you that this was not agency time and you can't claim it as agency regular time. And that's the information I reviewed and based my opinion in part on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shan. Can I ask you, please, actually, I think I'm done asking questions to Mr. Shan. I just lost my train of thought about the next question I want to ask, but that's fine.
Okay. All right. So, Ms. Landry, is there any recross from the agency?
No, Your Honor, no recross.
All right, Mr. Chung, we do appreciate your testimony here today. Please don't discuss your testimony with anyone who is not now present until this hearing is concluded, which will be sometime later today. You're released and you may exit the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you. All right, let's go off the record.
We are off the record at 12:26 p.m.